Come vacation to Precambrian time. It started 4,600 million years ago and ended 542 million years ago. Some fun facts. It was broken into 2 eons, the Archean and a Proterozoic. However, the atmosphere was made up of methane and other toxic gases, so you may have to bring a gas mask. The land was formed by hardened lava, and it is theorized that organic compounds came from meteorites. Oxygen was created by ions being rusted by photosynthetic bacteria. Sexual reproduction of the eukaryotes contributed to the evolution of mammals. Witness genetic variation, which led to natural selection. For those of you who like the scuba, oceans inhabited all organisms. Prokaryotes were archaebacteria that were the original life forms of Earth. These tiny organisms were created oxygen and are responsible for all life today, and they are also found in water. The eukaryotes were created when prokaryotes started to engulf each other and create multi-celled organisms. Venture to the Paleozoic era and go into the Cambrian period. You could be the first to witness when diverse animals of major groups start to appear on the fossil record, which was called the Cambrian explosion, which started 542 million years ago and lasted 40 million years. This is when oceans became oxygenated and was between 2 ice ages. One was in the late Proterozoic and other was in the Ordovician era. Much of the Cambrian seas were consisted of some organisms that exist today. See the trilobites. The trilobites were land-shelled animals that either crawled on the seafloor, swam, or drifted to new areas in currents. They were invertebrates, herbivores, detritivores, and they were scavengers. The echinoderms looked like today's starfish or sand dollars, so bring one of those souvenirs home. They were the largest phylum to be a freshwater or land pentamineral. What's so unique about this period? Animals showed the extreme diversification, as the Cambrian period boasts the fastest growth in the number of new animal groups in history. Come see the Ordovician period, which started 488 million years ago. For those who like diversity in the vertebrates, come see the Ostracoderms, which were jawless, armored fish, and they contributed to the oldest fossils known to man. And the conodonts were early underwater vertebrates, and at this time period, they were at the peak of their development. They had a high diverse amount of vertebrates in the grapitoids, the trilobites, the brachiopods, and the conodonts. Most life forms thrived in the vast oceans, while others were on the southern supercontinent, Gondwana. Coral and reef organisms were dominated by algae and sponges. Come see the seafloor, which continued to spread as underwater volcanoes continued to erupt. While all land was collected in Gondwana, many other organisms, such as trilobites, were thriving in the ocean. Many mountain ranges we know today started to form, so come see the formation of the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains. Toward the end of this period, come see the glaciation that was centered in Africa, which caused a major level drop in the sea level, which also caused a mass extinction to organisms that ruled the period. If you like your continental landmasses low and the sea level high, come to the Silurian period, which started 444 million years ago. Come scuba in the reefs that had vast ecosystems of their own and were growing in size and occurrence. Come see the mass supercontinent Gondwana, which was situated in the south and covered most of the southern latitudes, while the northern part of the planet, come see the 2 smaller continents, Laurentia and Baltica, which were on the equator. The new organisms were beginning to inhabit freshwater environments, and come see the first organisms venture to land. If you like your fish jawless, come see the Ognatha, which were similar to hagfish that we see today in lampreys. They were armored fish with a cartilage skeleton. They were earliest known fish to have developed jaws later on. The Eurypterids were considered the apex predators of the Silurian oceans. They appeared similar to horseshoe crabs and commonly had a spike at the end of their tails, so try this new type of seafood. This period was when the climate was finally becoming warm and stable after the glaciers of the Ordovician. In spite of this change, come see the animals venture onto new lands, and come see the plants beginning to form because of lichens. The first air-breathing animals, arthropods such as centipedes and millipedes, began to reproduce. For all you fishermen out there, come see the Devonian period, which started 416 million years ago. The Devonian period was known as the Age of Fishes, even though plants started to evolve, and at that period marked the beginning of the first insects. The 2 smaller equatorial continents Laurentia and Baltica collided, creating Euramerica. The two continents of Earth were slowly drifting into each other, so see them collide. The Earth was starting to heat up, and it was going to be the cause of a second mass extinction, so don't forget your sunscreen. Come see the plants that started quickly colonizing the lands as animals were venturing onto the terrestrial areas. The lycophyte trees started bearing seeds, and they were formed the first forest along the horsetails and worms. The tetrapods most likely evolved from lobe-finned fishes, and they took advantage of the predator-free and food-rich wetland environment. These organisms later evolved into early amphibians. The close of this period was considered another mass extinction, which consisted in 2 episodes. Come see the depletion of CO2 after the forest started to form, and see it kill over 70% of the invertebrate species, and then watch it include marking the end of the age of the trilobites and the jawless fish. However, the terrestrial plants and animals were mostly unaffected by the event, giving them a leap ahead into domination. If you're a miner, you might want to come and see the Carboniferous period, which started 359 million years ago. As plants and animals died and decayed in the vast tropical forest, they were put under pressure of more organisms and they created coal. These fossils have explained the lives and ancestors of many organism groups, such as the tetrapods and the arthropods. The 2 major continents of Earth, gathered at the equator, caused a vast tropical rainforest that are widespread all over the land. Come see the tropical rainforest that inhabited large ferns, horsetails, and other plants. Come see the insects feasting on the greens and the arthropods that crawled across the ground. The temperature began decreasing to a mildly warm climate once more. Come and see the large ferns that were found everywhere in the forest and that were seed-bearing. The fronds would start out curled and then uncoil as the plant would mature. The Anthracomedusa jellyfish still exists today, and these animals had stinging cells protecting it from the predators. Surprisingly, these jelly-like animals were fossilized and found at a site called Mazoon Creek. As both of these supercontinents were situated at the equator, this is the last period of pre-Pangea. The forests have been developed all over the continents, and the land animals and plants were becoming more diverse. Bring your cameras, because you're not going to want to miss this. We're going to see 2 continents collide in the Permian period, which started 299 million years ago. Take video of the 2 supercontinents of Earth, Euramerica and Gondwana, to collide to make the biggest supercontinent in history, Pangea. At the time, Pangea looked like a thickened letter C. Because Pangea was so immense, the wetlands that were furthest from the shore became much cooler and dry. Come see the animals that evolved and formed schools. These animals would soon cause mammals to come into existence. Witness the 3rd and largest mass extinction in history, called the Great Dying. The Great Dying wiped out 95% of all marine life and 70% of land animals that had come to existence after 100,000 years. It is theorized that the volcanic eruptions in the north or an asteroid strike in the south caused the temperature to quickly get cold, which caused the forming of huge glaciers to stretch across Pangea. But see for yourself. See that after the creation of Pangea, there is little fossil record of the oceans. But however, the fossils of the coastal waters indicate that the reefs were large and diverse in ecosystems. Go and see the species of these ecosystems that were lobe-finned and spiny, that gave rise to the amphibian. See the first gymnosperms, which were vascular plants that were able to transport water within themselves. They had exposed seeds that were on the scales of cones and fertilized when pollen landed on the seed. The Cyniaspids and the Saurospids were 2 important groups of animals that had skulls and were thought to be the lineage that eventually led to the age of mammals. The groups were highly diverse, which increased their chance of survival. So what makes this period so unique that you have to see it? Well, the Permian period marked the end of the Paleozoic era and set up the requirements needed to host the monstrous reptiles we call dinosaurs. Finally, the largest mass extinction in history left the Earth cold and the oceans in a lifeless state. The Mesozoic area started 251 million years ago and ended 65.5 million years ago. If you like dinosaurs, well, you better see the beginning of them in the Jurassic period, which started the Mesozoic era in 251 million years ago. After the mass extinction of the Permian period of the Paleozoic era, it was time for land animals to diversify. When the continents condensed into Pangea, It was generally dry on land, with very, very hot summers and very cold winters, so pack both types of clothing. Later on, sea-to-sea floor spreading caused a major continent to split back into two continents, which would be Laurasia and Gondwana, which would be completed in the Jurassic period. The Jurassic period began the age of reptiles and the beginning of the earliest mammals. These mammals were small, but however, plants and insects did not go through much evolutionary change. Unfortunately, few marine families survived a mass extinction, and that causing them a major setback in its evolution. Do you like small dinosaurs or dinosaurs at all? Well, you better check out the Coelophyus, which was a quick and agile hunter. It had hollow bones and a hole-ridden skull, which decreased its weight and increased its speed. The Archosaurs are one of the two major groups of animals in the Jurassic period. One lineage of these animals developed into the true dinosaur. Why should we see the Jurassic period? Well, the Jurassic period gave new life to the world and brought out the famous dinosaurs in the beginning of the mammals. The oceans remained lifeless, however, but the land was hustling with the largest creatures ever known to man. Have you ever watched the movie Jurassic Park? Well, you better come and see the real thing at the Jurassic period, which started 200 million years ago. Witness the supercontinent Pangaea begin to drift apart into the 7 continents that we know today. Watch the marine world begin to diversify once more into carnivores such as the plesiosaurs, and watch marine animals that were generally known with broad bodies, long necks, and 4 flipper-shaped limbs. While the reptiles were enormous and dominant, tiny mammals that were herbivores or insectivores did not get in contact with the reptiles, allowing them to survive their harsh environment. Most reptiles were carnivorous, as they would grasp their prey with their claws and tear it to pieces and then swallow it to whole. Talk about a human sacrifice. However, some were herbivores. These animals had long necks and ate the leaves off the trees. The famous Stegosaurus was a large plant-eating dinosaur that lived primarily in North America. Being the size of the bus, it had a small brain, the size and the shape of a bent hot dog. What the heck is an Atobosleus? Well, it looked like a shrew, but this was an early mammal that had a differentiated ear and the jaw bones of a mammal. What's so unique about the Jurassic period? Well, this period is commonly described in movies and books, and they tell about how the mammals survived the menacing dinosaurs. The life in the oceans make up for the extinction, and the hundreds of new animal species evolved due to diversity. The last and longest period in the Mesozoic era was the Cretaceous period. It started 146 million years ago, and it started after minor extinction of the Jurassic period. The oceans were higher and the continents were lower on their way to the places today. The Cretaceous period hosted the KPG extinction event, which killed nearly all large invertebrates and many tropical invertebrates, and the geological climatic event. Since the dinosaurs were cold-blooded, they were accustomed to the cold climate, but it is theorized that the Chicxulub crater in the Yucatan or the series of volcanic eruptions caused the Earth to increase in temperature, causing the dinosaurs to overheat and die. However, the small warm-blooded mammals were highly diversified, and they were able to survive and hide from the fires in the heat caused by these events. Have you ever wanted to meet the Tyrannosaurus Rex in real life? Well, the T-Rex was a carnivorous dinosaur that maintained a stable level of diversity to help it survive the minor mass extinction after the Jurassic period. The Apatosaurus was a giant sauropod that was becoming extinct during this period. These creatures were vertebrates that were very wide with a thick neck. Its average weight was estimated to be close to 20 tons. The Cretaceous period was the longest period of the Mesozoic era. It marked the beginning of angiosperms, or flowering plants, and birds took the place of the petrosaurs in the era. Also, the continents were assuming their present-day positions. The age of mammals was soon coming. Have you ever heard of the Cenozoic era? Well, that's the era that you're living in today, and it started 65.5 million years ago. It started with the Tertiary era, which started 65.5 million years ago. Global warming caused a significantly warmer Earth than it is today. It was warm from pole to pole, and it was followed by a long cold period. All the dinosaurs had died out, except for the ones that soared in the air. The mammals that had towered before the dinosaurs started to evolve into hoofed animals, rodents, and carnivores. The first warm tropical forests and cool, dry grasslands provided environments for many different varieties of mammals. Mammals became diverse into 3 types in different ways of birth. The monotems, which hatched from eggs, the marsupials, which were born before they were fully developed, and they continued development outside the womb, often in a pouch. and the placentals, which developed entirely in the womb, and then it was born. They're the largest and most diverse mammal group. The pantodont was a large lumbering plant eater that rested on its huge hind limbs and was able to reach high branches. It was one of the first mammals to reach a large size, but however is extinct to us today. The Oxydactylus longipes was an early camel that had short teeth with a thin animal. This period showed the beginning of hominids, which were the ancestors of humans, in which mammals were becoming more diverse and larger. The world was getting closer to our present day, but it was toward the end of this period that mammals were introduced to an ice age. Come see your ancestors that you've never seen before in a Quaternary era, which started 1.8 million years ago and is still happening today. It was usually divided into two epochs: the Pleistocene epoch, which lasted between 2 million years ago and then 12,000 years ago, and then Holocene epoch, which started 12,000 years ago. Scientists prove that there are evidence of over 60 periods of glacial expansion with brief warmer intervals to separate them. Come see the beautiful glaciers that covered up to 30% of the Earth's surface. Have you heard about the woolly mammoth that they're trying to bring back to life today? Well, see it in its original environment when enormous herbivores, such as the mammoth, the bison, the rhinoceros, began to evolve. These animals were easily adapted to the cold, and they were preyed upon by toothed cats, cave bears, and wolves. The ancestors before Homo sapiens, the Homo erectus, was ancestor of man, and it was one of the first hominid species to use fire. These animals were successful hunters and were hypothesized to have lived in Eurasia and Africa. They were the first hominids to build shelters, wear clothing, and they used tools made of bone and stone to accomplish everyday activities. Evidence shows that we, the Homo sapiens, originated in Africa and are about 195,000 years old. They experienced many drastic climate changes and learned that a longer childhood and the division of labor allowed children and females to venture for new food sources. At about 12,000 years ago, the land bridge that stretched between Siberia and Alaska allowed humans to travel to America. But afterwards, another mass extinction began to occur because of the overhunting of humans and the destruction of many ecosystems over time. The Quaternary period exhibits the creation of the smallest animals and explains how they have survived the many drastic climate changes. Changes in the Earth's surface has left its mark on life, and it indicates that a future generation of homos may occur, leading to another period in a Cenozoic era.